You're listening to the Trade Show Insights Podcast, Season 13, Episode 9. I'm your host and exhibit marketing strategist, Marlis Arnold, bringing you tools to improve your exhibit results. On today's episode, brought to you by the Exhibit Marketers Cafe, we're talking about ways to make your exhibit more engaging by introducing some gamification elements. Today, our topic for Trade Show Insights is gamification in your exhibit. And we have the perfect guest here today to talk about this. We have Samuel J. Smith, who is an award-winning innovator in event technology. I mean, he's got a long list of awards that he and his company have won. He is also the managing director and owner of Interactive Meeting Technology, LLC, creators of the Social Point Audience Engagement Platform. So, Sam, welcome, and thank you for being our guest today.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Great. Well, I want to start out. I think most people understand the basic premise of gamification, but why don't you kind of give us a little bit better framework as far as gamification as it applies to trade shows? What are we talking about?
Yeah, I think there's two different angles people look at. I think there's the show owner's point of view in terms of gamification, but then there's the exhibitor's point of view. And we do a lot of work with exhibitors. And so from their point of view, they're trying to do really two different things. They're either trying to drive booth traffic, right? And so the gaming element is about getting people into the booth, or they are looking at some type of lead capture. So whether that's And so it could be that it's just pure lead capture, and so the gaming element is related to the lead capture, or it could be related to managing giveaways. So instead of just having a bunch of giveaways and just passing those out at random, some people use a virtual prize wheel to help manage them. Oh, you get this giveaway, right? Instead of something different. So we see that used a couple of different ways. In a trade show, if you're the show owner, we see it operating a little bit differently. In fact, we recently wrote a blog post about this exact topic. And what we're finding that show owners are doing, like we just did a big project for Cisco Live, and we've done this for Allianz and some other folks as well. And what they're doing is they'll set, say, a trivia game in the center of the floor, and then around it, all the content of that trivia will be based on the exhibitors that are around that game. And so then and what's really cool is that people will go, and if they don't know the content, they're like, hey, go to that booth. And so like at Cisco Live, it was related to the security village or the collaboration village. So all the content was related to the exhibitors in that area. So we'll see that stuff happen. And there's a new type of game we're working on where folks are going to, you go to these different booths. So instead of the typical passport, right? Some people say, hey, go to all my stations. And in fact, that trivia game in the middle of the floor is an alternative to the passport, right? So instead of going around and getting your stamp and then coming back and saying, I went to all the booths, this is about the trivia game in the middle of the floor is like, hey, play the trivia game. And then if you know the content of that booth, right, what their core marketing messages are, then you'll do well in this trivia game. And so maybe you didn't go to that booth, but it also gives the exhibitors a touch point to say, yes, they are answering questions correctly about my core marketing messages. They know what I'm doing. So that's one thing. But I'm also seeing that passport where we're seeing games where they may not want people to go to all stations, but they're doing kind of a digital scavenger hunt. And then maybe they spin the prize wheel at the end if they, have been to so many stations. We're seeing people want to do that as well.
Oh, okay.
That makes sense? That's a lot, right? So
that's a lot, but it also shows that there's a lot of different ways to do this. There's not like one right way that works for every exhibitor or for every show. So there's a lot of different ways that you could put your own spin on it. And just talking about gamification in general, I know one of the most successful things I ever did, and I've had clients do this too, exhibitor clients. I did a pre-show online scavenger hunt where I sent out the questions ahead of time. They had to fill them out and then bring their answers to the booth. I actually had people lining up, and this was a show that was really dead and traffic was bad. And I had people lining up in my booth because, like you said, they had gone, they had answered questions, they had already educated themselves. So just like doing that in-booth trivia, it's helping you to pre-qualify these people, and basically they're pre-qualifying themselves.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to the trivia, trivia is an interesting example because there's a lot of island booths that are really, they're trying to work on education, right? So how do I educate these customers, whether they're customers or prospects or leads, right? Or opportunities, depending on where they are in the life cycle. So they're trying to think about that. So sometimes they're doing presentations or demo stations or whatever the right thing is for that person at that stage. But the game also comes into play. A trivia game comes into play because it gives them an opportunity to educate people about the content, but they also can collect a ton of data. Like we'll have customers that ask, they'll either do qualifying questions in a survey right before the game is played, or they'll do what we call marketing follow-up questions, like, do you want to be in our newsletter? Do you want our white paper? Do you want to talk to our rep? And so instead of the booth staffer having to guess what's the next step here, right? Mm-hmm. In this case, you've got the person kind of telling you while they're playing a game, this is my next step, right? And that makes your life a lot easier because we hear about people that send all their leads to sales or all their leads go into the newsletter or whatever. Neither of those strategies are probably the best follow-up strategy. It is a strategy, but you want to get people where they're in the right spot in the life cycle or in their life cycle. So if you can kind of get that from them, whether through qualification or through asking them more specific questions, then that helps you with your follow-up and make sure that you put those leads in the right spot so you can get maximum impact post-event. And a game can do that, right?
Well, and it also makes it more personalized. So like you said, you're not just doing the same follow-up with everybody no matter what they were interested or how interested they are. You've got them, put them into, I guess you'd say, buckets. They're in different buckets of different ways to follow up or different procedures to use for follow-up. So that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I mean, some people are. We were at the exhibitor show just as a simple example for our own selves. We were our own exhibitor, right, at the exhibitor show, mm-hmm. and we had some qualification questions, and that told us based on those answers, based on the answers to those questions and any personal conversation, gave us a clear indication of what was the best action. Because some people that had a lot of interest, they had maybe answered some of the survey questions that indicated that they were interested and excited, but they were never going to buy, right? Right. And so sometimes being excited doesn't always equal I have authority to buy, I'm interested in buying, I will buy, right? And so that helped us prioritize and get to the right people and close a lot of deals quickly after the event. Because we weren't we didn't have sales spending time on leads they didn't need to, but we had these other folks go into a nurture cycle, which mm-hmm. either allows them to refer us to other people who would buy or just keeps us in the forefront of their mind until they are ready. So I think that's important. Well, and exactly. And just because they're not ready or they're not interested at the moment that they came to your booth doesn't mean that they're not going to be later. So I like how you said you put them into a nurturing sequence so that they still got more information. They were still able to, because even if they're not the decision maker, they're obviously in a position, if they're excited, they can share it and tell other potential clients about. Exactly. And so then your marketing communication that's post-event, right, is appropriate for that. But kind of the point of this, our podcast today is all of that data came from a game, right? Mm-hmm. And it wasn't only the game. Sometimes it was also with a in-person interaction with the booth staff, but all of that data with the game. In using our platform, we can take that game data, and then we also have a lead manager app where all that data is on your phone. So then you can combine the in-person conversation with the game data and just have one story about those leads from the event. And so that's what's really, I think, the true power, or some of the true power here, is that you can have a fun game, you can educate people, right? But then you can take it one step further to help inform your follow-up and help you be effective in follow-up. If that's, that should be your goal, right? Most B2B exhibitors, they are measuring themselves on closed sales, and so getting data that helps move people to the next stage in the buying cycle is what's important, right? Whether that's getting them all the way to closed won, or determining that they're a market qualified lead or a sales qualified lead, and then making sure you can move along. So you need the data to be able to do that. And sometimes scanning someone's badge isn't enough to get you there.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I like how you brought it back around to the lead gathering and management stage, because, I mean, just doing a game in your booth and getting lots of traffic isn't really the point. I mean, it's part of the point of getting more people excited and engaged with your company and your exhibit, but definitely there needs to be a point to it. There needs to be, what's our overarching goal? Why are we doing this game? So let's talk a little bit. We talked some about the idea of the trivia game. Let's talk about some of the other different types of gamification techniques, and maybe what works based on what an exhibitor's goals are or their purpose is.
Yeah. So when it comes to education, there's nothing better than trivia games. So let's just say if that's your goal, you want to look for some type of trivia game, but that's not all exhibitors are that way. There's a lot of exhibitors that have giveaways to manage, and so then maybe a virtual prize wheel or an instant win game is good for that. I also see exhibitors using the virtual prize wheel. They'll say, hey, come watch our demo. I had an exhibitor that had a 10 by 10 booth, and they cleared out the whole booth, one monitor. They said, hey, if you come and watch our presentation, we'll let you spin the prize wheel. And they had a big button on a pedestal. So that was basically their booth. And so then you watched the presentation, and then afterward, you got to spin the wheel. And they were collecting the leads along the way, but they only used, from us, they didn't use all of they had their own data collection system, right? Lead capture system. So then they used just the big button on the prize wheel. What was really cool is they had thousands of people come through their booth. And talk about maximizing your real estate, right? Because their game for that particular exhibitor, the name of the game was leads. And so they knew that by having a big button, they could get the people in the booth. And I've heard this over and over again, and have clients that will swear to it. But then you also but then they said, hey, but I need to educate you. So they did a presentation. So that was in a small booth, right? A 10 by 10.
Right.
I've seen, and it's quite common. So when they want to do a virtual prize wheel, or, these are folks that they may have done a real physical prize wheel in the past, but, those are clunky and you got to haul them around. And, when your prizes are out, and you only have two left, it's weird because you landed on something that they don't have anymore. So you're excited, but they don't have it. So, in the virtual prize
the
wheel,
whole purpose at that point, right?
Exactly. When the virtual prize wheel manages all of that, right? And manages inventory. And you can actually track, got clients, they'll put 5 or 6 iPads out, and especially at consumer events, they'll put 5 or if they're doing a ride and drive or whatever, they'll 5 or 6 iPads, and people fill in their information, and then they spin, and they might get the pencil or the hat or the small branded item, but they're in it for the chance to win the trip to Jamaica or whatever the client is offering that's really big, right? And they will fill out a whole bunch of share a bunch of information about themselves, and they'll give accurate information, right? Because if they win the trip, they want to be called, so they make sure to give the right stuff. Anyway, I'm kind of going long on this, but what we find there is those events those clients have 2 goals, right? They need to capture a lot of leads, but then they also have to manage volume of people, so they need multiple stations where they can concurrently process people. And so And so that's where these iPads come in, and we have an inventory management tool on the backside to make sure that, hey, if you only have one trip to Hawaii to give away, not two of these people will win it at the same time, right? It makes sure that only one person won, and the other guy can't win at the same time. And so that's kind of cool because also it allows our clients to kind of manage their inventory or adjust it accordingly. Like if inventory didn't make it, they need to change it, or if they want to repeat the same thing at 3 different shows in 3 different cities, right? And they just have an inventory kit they send out to different sales reps, but the prize wheel is the same. They can do that. So we'll see that, and we see those effective in small booths. And we see people using, like I've mentioned, that you can have the monitor with the button. We'll see folks using that monitor with the button to really help themselves stand out in an aisle, in a crowded aisle, right? So if you imagine walking down a crowded aisle, it's really hard. Everybody's got, their cool graphics and everyone's got something to show. But if you have a big monitor that has a prize wheel on it, right, it starts to stand out. It looks different. What is that? And people love to hit the button. So then you can start to draw your own crowd and differentiate yourself in that aisle. And so we see that a lot. And, but we also see in regional shows where what they're doing is they're sending reps out with tablets. So they might have all the lead capture stuff and the prize wheel on a tablet so that they know that Mark Smith won the socks and that Kevin Jones won the Starbucks gift card. And although the distribution and delivery of all of those gifts may be done not by the salesperson, but by someone else in marketing support. So we've seen that too, right? Where those regional salespeople, all they need to do is turn on the iPad and get it set up. And sometimes some of your listeners might have this challenge. For some marketers, that's a challenge, right? Getting a salesperson to be compliant with what marketing wants. But anyway, we also so we've seen that be successful. We've seen Instant Win be successful. Maybe you only have a handful of prizes. So Instant Win can be successful, that type of game, because in those cases, maybe you only have 5 prizes to give away. You don't have 100 or 50 or whatever the right number is. And so then Instant Win is another choice. But then, another thing we see is, it's called the Digital Fishbowl. And we won a Buyer's Choice Award at Exhibitor this year for this product. It's essentially a kiosk that collects all the information, the lead data, the attendee data, but then you're going to do a prize giveaway later. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing this one be highly effective in 2 ways. In the small booth and in the regional shows, right? People are coming and filling these out. They can be put on a tablet. A salesperson can easily carry it with them, or it can be put on a kiosk. But something we've just started to see collect data on is having those stations in a bigger booth where people that are really busy. So those stations, those digital fishbowls, are able to collect leads even while booth staffers are busy, right? So if you have a scanner, scanner requires someone to scan, but what if there's not someone to scan and you want to share a booth visitor wants to share their information or enter your drawing? Well, these kiosks allow you to do that, and they could each have a different survey on them. So I have some clients that have these large 30 by 40 booths, and they've got many stations around. Well, they might want to do e-literature fulfillment at each station. So if someone were to come along and fill that out, they're going to be able to capture what we call overflow leads that they, when all booth staffers are busy and their booth is just swamped, they would have lost otherwise. And so this helps them pick those up, and we find that to be a valuable tool as well for folks. But it could be simply tied to enter a drawing, and that's okay. So I don't know, that's quite a few different types of games, right? We've got some content-based games or trivia, some giveaway-type games, which are Instant Win and prize wheel, right, help you manage giveaways. But then you can also use those in different size booths. If you're in if you're in the aisle, right, or if you're going out to regional shows, these could be good because it's just simply a tablet connected to the internet, and that's something a salesperson can set up and run. And then you've also got something more sophisticated where you've got a prize wheel that might be attached to data collection in a big booth. So that makes sense.
I love how you gave examples that it works in anywhere from a small booth to a huge island. I mean, I think a lot of times, especially the small exhibitors think, well, all of this stuff is great, but it's only for people with a lot of space and a big budget. But like you said, there's a lot of different options and a lot of ways that it can be scalable for booths of all different sizes.
Yeah, no, I think that's right on. We meet a lot of exhibitors that they might have the big, huge booths, but maybe they're only doing a handful of shows with those big booths during the year. And then they might have 40 or 50 shows that are more of a 10 by 20 or 10 by 10. So having solutions that scale to all of those different sizes is important. I think also it's important, what you might have heard from these games is that not all games are the same. So you need to read your audience and look at your goals and objectives. So I have a client that when they go to SHRM, they do trivia and these guys sell workplace posters, right? It's not sexy. People aren't running in to see what's up with the latest workplace poster, right? And getting a demo of the workplace poster. So they use a trivia game, right? And they drive a ton of leads out of that, right? And leads after leads after leads. But they go to other shows during the year with different market segments where maybe it's all CEO level or VP level, right? Kind of that top of the food chain, business executive. There, they decided they were going to use a giveaway strategy to get the lead data in the booth. So they set up kiosks where people come in and fill out the lead information, and then they get a chance to spin the wheel, and they had a big button to do that, right? They had a smaller booth. So that was also part of it. But their worst prize, like even if you were bad and you didn't do very well spinning the wheel, you were going to get a Yeti tumbler, right? So They recognized who their audience is and said, hey, we want these guys in here so bad, even if you're just get the worst prize is a Yeti tumbler, right? The best prize was a Yeti 50-gallon cooler or something like that, right?
Wow.
So they had really great prizes, but they also had good, what I would call high volume prizes or, those low value prizes. So those were already
prize.
good. Yeah, consolation prize. But it was if you think about it, they read their audience. They understood this type of strategy they needed to have to get them in the booth and used it. And they felt like while trivia was successful in a few different types of events, in this particular one it wouldn't be. And so then they had a bunch of people come in, they collected a ton of leads, and, they gave away a bunch of Yeti stuff. And so they were happy, right? And so I think it's also important that one game won't fit all of your exhibiting strategies, depending on what types of shows you go to. So.
That's a great example of how, tailoring it not only for the audience, but also for the different types of shows that you're doing. So it can vary from one event to another throughout the year. So one thing we haven't talked about that I want to just address is the concept of leaderboards. How do you see leaderboards playing a role in the whole, intrigue or success of gamification?
Well, let's speak to this from the exhibitor's point of view. So let's pretend the exhibitor has a trivia game. They have a leaderboard. And so they've got this big visual monitor with a leaderboard on it. And the way we set up our game is that the game stations are just beneath the leaderboard, so you can always see where you are on the leaderboard. But also, so that leaderboard should be able to be seen from the aisle, right, from far away, because I want everyone to see my name at the top. And you want everyone to see your name above mine, right?
Exactly.
And that's what's important. And so what happens is you'll find people that define success as I'm on the leaderboard, and they'll take a picture. And that's they've won, right? They post that on social media, they've won. You see people that they have to win, right? So I'm at the top. And then they come back later and they want to see if they're still at the top, and we'll try to get to the top. And that's a small percentage of the people. Then you'll also see people that say, I have to beat Sam. I don't care what happens, but I have to beat him, because if he's on the leaderboard, this game must be really easy. And so The point here is that people use that to define success in different ways, and they don't always have to win, right? It could be just beating a friend or being there, and that's what makes it fun. And so then over a 3-day show, you may have one game that goes on for 3 days, and that's totally fine. I have clients that will reset the leaderboard every half day. I have clients that have a new game every day. So if I go back to that Cisco example, we have a game called 3 Strikes, and it's really a really cool game for getting people to learn about your content. And it's a trivia game, but it's really designed, and the behaviors that it creates are just educational and collaboration. So on day 1, they did that, and they showed everyone the answers. But on day 2, they set up a timed game where you had 2 minutes. I think it was 2 minutes. Maybe it was 90 seconds, 2 minutes to answer as many questions as you could correctly. And the more questions you got right, it was like the SAT. The more questions you got right, the more points you got.
Ah.
Right? So if you just guessed, yes, you could answer a lot of questions, but you didn't mean anything for what your points would be. But they didn't, and then afterward, they didn't show people the correct answer, right? You just either knew it or you didn't. Then on day 3, they did something that we call a timed quiz. So the way it was set up is you had 12 seconds per question. So, and there was only a finite set of questions, and the faster you answered, the more points you got, right?
Wow.
But if you don't answer it correctly, there's only 10 questions or whatever. I forgot how many questions they had, but there's a finite set of questions. So you have to be accurate but fast.
Right.
And so that's more about, do you know it, right? So the first game was kind of discovering the knowledge. I don't know it. Ooh, that's good to know. And because there's also, you learn something from your mistake. But when it gets into timed quiz territory, then you want to find out, do they know it? The other thing that we do in our games is that we use, the question banks are that we use an algorithm to pull questions. So every game player that's standing next to each other sees different questions in a different order. And if I were to play again, it's different questions in a different order. So you always have more questions than you have in the game, right? So the person's playing. And you might have seen some of these questions before, but they weren't the first question or the second one, right? So you can't just memorize an order or a pattern.
Yeah.
You have to know the content, right? So I think, some of that, when it comes to the, like those learning games and leaderboards, right? The gameplay and how you put together the different kind of game can also influence the leaderboard, because you can have it will change from day to day. Yes, I won on day 1, but man, I'm not fast. I needed to think about all those answers or talk to my friends about it. And so also for exhibitors, it depends on who their audience is. Now, do you have time if I speak to show owners for a second?
Sure. Yeah, we haven't really covered that angle yet, so go ahead.
So show owners with the leaderboard is a little bit different. What we see a lot of times is that they'll do games that might be, hey, we want to have a bunch of activities that people do, and maybe it's question of the day. Did you participate in question of the day? Did you do word cloud? Did you play the trivia game? Did you spin the prize wheel? Did you take the survey? Right? All these activities. Maybe it's a physical challenge activity, right? Timed activity, right? How fast can you assemble this? Right? So we'll see those kinds of games. But then from a show owner's point of view, a leaderboard might be, you might have like in the Cisco example that I gave, they might have a leaderboard just of that individual game, but they have multiple games on the floor, or they might have a game that combines all these activities. You do this variety of activities, maybe post a photo, whatever it is. In those games, it's different behavior. So you'll have people that are motivated to win. You'll have people that are motivated to complete all the tasks, right?
Right.
So if I have a whole bunch of tasks, I completed them. Those are the same people that go pick up everything at a booth. They're collectors, and that's called a collector behavior. And so they care about having this set. So actually in those games, the leaderboard is interesting, but sometimes it's not always clear, how do I move up and down the leaderboard, right? If I have a leader, there's all these scavenger hunt games, right? And they're all points based. Well, someone's going to win, and will I be motivated to play if I don't think I can win, right? But if I can get a set of something, if I can get all the badges, or go to all the stations, I may define that as my success. And so we see those things helping out to make some of those other types of games successful, right? When they have it's not always called a scavenger hunt, but maybe it's some kind of an attendee challenge that they have to go do a bunch of activities and they get points for those. Not everyone's motivated by all those points. Not everyone's motivated to go to all the stations. Some people are, and they have to go to the stations. But also, if you look at data from those things, you'll see that people only went to the stations, maybe the stations that are in an area of interest or a place they were staying. So we did one where it was a home tour, totally not trade shows, but a home tour. And what happened is that people wanted to earn points, or wanted to get their check-ins and that stuff. But what they really only cared about was the homes they cared about. So yeah, they went to them and they played, but there was very few people that felt like they had to go to all the places. Right. I've seen that happen also with in a sales meetings with independent reps or with dealers, right? In these kind of independent rep or dealer meetings, some people care about all of it, but most people are focused on the things they care about. Now, the game is helpful because the data tells you, look, you've got these segments of people that have these common problems or these common concerns. Can you take that data and do something useful with it in a post-event, right? Help those dealers be more successful. Help those independent reps be more successful. Is that a common pattern that you knew about, right? And sometimes they say, yeah, we knew about that. Okay, we'll do more, right? Or other times they view it as an insight, and it's really up to them. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's lots of games. We do lots of games. All right.
Lots of games, lots of strategies, lots of reactions and responses from the audience. So, again, thank you, Sam. You've given us a wealth of ideas and tools and tips for today. I do want to point out that Sam has also written a report for the Center for Exhibition Industry Research that goes more in depth with more tips and case studies on gamification. So I'll make sure to put a link for that in the show notes so you can go check that out as well, along with a link to the Social Point website so you can see, and there's a ton of information there with blog posts and ebooks and things that you can get that tell you a lot more about gamification. But Sam, I want to thank you again. You have been so generous with your time and your wisdom on this subject, and I just want to ask if there's any final thoughts that you want to share with our Trade Show Insights listeners today.
Yeah, I think the last thing I would like to share is that if you want to drive booth traffic, there is a game can help you, and that should be something that you do consider. It doesn't mean you have to talk to us, but it should be something that you think about because there's lots of ways to get people in the booth. But once you get them there, remember you then need to funnel them to the right place in your buying cycle. And so just keep that in mind. A game can help you, but also make it about your content and then funnel people to the right spot in your buying cycle. And then it will be a success and you'll be happy and you'll get a promotion. You'll have so many leads, you'll get a promotion. All right.
I love it. What a perfect spot to end. So thank you again to Samuel Smith for joining us today on Trade Show Insights. If you want to learn more about the games that Sam talked about, or if you want to read the Social Point blog for lots more tips and strategies, go to socialpoint.io. Want more tips and tools for your exhibit marketing? Check out the free resources available from the Exhibit Marketers Cafe. Simply go to tradeshowinsights.com and click on Free Resources to discover toolkits, webinars, and more, including a link to sign up for the Trade Show Tips online monthly e-zine. Trade Show Insights is protected by the Creative Commons copyright license. You may feel free to share this recording with colleagues or embed it on your own blog as long as it's shared in its entirety and is not used for commercial purposes. To learn more, please see the link in the sidebar of the show notes at tradeshowinsights.com. Well, that's it for this episode of Trade Show Insights.
Be sure to check out our show notes and archives at tradeshowinsights.com. You can also connect with me using the social media links or the contact page on the site. I'm Marlis Arnold. Thanks for listening, and be sure to join us next time for more tools to improve your exhibit results.